1996. 7-year-old me got an N64, but our parents didn't get us any games. We went to Blockbuster, and of all the games we could pick, we picked Mortal Kombat Trilogy. That probably wasn't the best choice. This is that same N64. It's gotten a lot of use. We've accumulated a lot of games for it, and I still break it out every so often, but it's really not easy to hook up anymore. What the hell am I supposed to do with all these? Most people who are going to want to play these games are going to gravitate towards emulation. Emulation gets you like 90% of the way there. Most games run great and they look all right. There's some great filters you can get to make emulated games look more like they did back in the day on older displays, but you usually have to set all that up yourself. This is the modern N64, built for today's displays and today's display resolutions. It plays actual cartridges, with picture quality designed to look as good as it can while still mimicking older displays, so games could look as good as they were ever intended to look. It doesn't add anything that isn't supposed to be there. You're still getting the same 64-bit game from the 90s. What you're getting is a sleek, modern console to play it on, and some better compatibility for today's world. This is the Analogue 3D. It uses FPGA technology to use hardware to emulate the hardware of the original N64. So everything plays exactly as it should, as far as I can tell. It supports up to 4K resolution at 60 frames per second, but don't expect sharp 4K N64 games. It's still an N64 game. What this really means is that games scale up from their native 240p resolution really nicely. That's 10 to 12 times scaling to get it to look good on modern 4K displays. It does everything an original N64 can do, including compatible hardware. You can use actual N64 controllers and even their memory packs and stuff. But it also has compatibility for 8BitDo's new N64 controllers that run on Bluetooth. There's a lot of modern conveniences in here, and $250 is honestly not bad for what you get. You can get an N64 on eBay for around like $100, and if you want to get that thing HDMI modded, that's going to be a lot more. This is a great way to bring N64 into the modern era, or to breathe some new life into your collection. And knowing Analogue, soon compatibility might stretch even further than N64 games. It's not for everybody. Some people would be just fine with the blurry mess they'd get hooking up a $20 RCA converter. Some people are just fine emulating stuff. This is for everyone else watching that thinks that this looks sick as hell.
Holy hell! What's all that racket over here? What, are you hungry? Yeah, I'm trying to order food, but the office Wi-Fi is being terrible. Oh, well that's easy. Why don't you just grab a Factor from the fridge? Shh! What? Shut it! What? Wrong ad. That was last week. It's a Surfshark ad this week. Oh. Why don't you use a VPN like No! Like Surfshark? Yes! Yes! Yay! Yeah. Yes, I use it all the time. It's an old document. Great. VPNs can help encrypt your data so that nobody on your network can see what you're doing, whether you're on public Wi-Fi, whether you're at the office, or whatever. Not even your own ISP can see what you're doing. VPNs like Surfshark can also change your location so that you can access content that might otherwise be blocked in your country. Surfshark One also gets you their VPN, their private web search, their data leak alerts, and their antivirus, which is also helpful for protecting your computer. Really? We're getting salads? Yeah, man. I gotta look good for my 18-year high school reunion. This year, I'm gonna get back together with the one that got away, and she's dead. Let's get burgers. Oh, yeah, okay, that sounds good. There's no risk to trying Surfshark, and they offer a free 30-day money-back guarantee. So go to surfshark.com/den and use code DEN for an extra 4 months of Surfshark VPN. Wow. Other countries have the best shows. And the best looking food in those shows. Look at that. What language is that? Whatever language the teachers in the Peanuts speak. Swahili?
So, Analogue has been around for a while making FPGA clone consoles. I've been around long enough to have witnessed their public perception change over time. Analogue was pretty much universally loved in the early days, but somewhere around when the Analogue Pocket launched, things started to change. There was nothing wrong with the Analogue Pocket. It was, and still is, a fantastic GBA clone. It is still one of the best emulation devices that exists. The Analogue Pocket was just very popular, drew a lot of attention their way. And almost immediately, retro game fanatics started picking up on their no emulation marketing. I bought into this too a little bit early on. Analogue claims that there's no emulation going on here because you're playing the game as you would have on original hardware. You're just not using software emulation, but there's still hardware emulation going on here. So it's still technically emulation. That distinction got nerds a little mad, and they're still running with that no emulation tagline. It's just a little less egregious this time around. They clarify what they mean a little bit this time. This really doesn't matter. It's just a silly little semantic argument. Analogue's FPGA technology is great, and everything runs just great on their hardware. Another reason people were really upset at Analogue around the time of the Analogue Pocket was that right at launch, they raised the price by $20, and then it was just always out of stock. And then, instead of fixing their stock issues, they just released new cool colorways, which were also always out of stock because they were limited edition ones. Now, people are mad again because the Analogue 3D was delayed. I think a grand total of 3 different times. And people are upset with Analogue's lack of transparency about this. They didn't really announce the delays until very last minute. And $250 is kind of a lot of money for a company to be holding without telling you what's going on. So I can understand why people are upset about this. This is an enthusiast item. I'd rather it be delayed and released in a good state rather than launched and shitty, because I'm going to make a video at launch, and if it sucks, everyone's going to know. And I'm going to have to tell everybody, hey, this thing sucks. And wouldn't that suck? So let's talk about why you would ever even want an N64 console like this over some of the other options out there, like adapters and just straight up emulation, because that's the first thing anybody says when I tell them that this thing exists. Using a $20 RCA adapter from Amazon is just out of the question for anybody who's nerdy enough to watch this far into this video. It's going to be very, very blurry. The input lag is usually very, very bad too. And sometimes they still don't work right with your modern TV. Sometimes the signal is all fucked up. And your TV might not be used to receiving a signal from a $20 Amazon RCA adapter. HDMI mods are very expensive if you have somebody else do them for you. They seem to have gotten easier to do yourself if you're savvy enough. But they also seem to only be able to go up to 720p as far as I can see. You can upscale it, but then you gotta buy an upscaler. And those cost hundreds of dollars too. The Eon Super 64 is a great option. I made a video on that a while ago. It just plugs into the back of your N64 and converts it to a clean HDMI. This is great if you want to stick with original hardware, but even that gives you just 480p, which some modern displays don't even support anymore. And that's also $160 on Amazon right now. You're already halfway to an Analogue 3D at that point, which is a whole ass console. Okay, so now that we've spent all this time justifying the existence of this thing, let's see what it can do. It's just as easy to get into the game on here as it is on a regular N64, except you are met with a home screen on boot. One of the things I love about Analogue is their clean UI. This is called 3D OS. Now, it looks a little different for reviewers because they preloaded all of the game artwork on here. So if you purchase one, you're not going to see all this cool artwork. I think you might still see the game names though. I'm sure once this releases, you'll easily be able to find the entire artwork library online, and you can pop it on the included SD card, which is sitting right in the back of the console. I suspect you'll also be able to do a lot of cool things with that SD card in the future. Now, these are all just games that I've played previously. You can't boot them up from here. Wouldn't it be cool if you could, though? You have to pop the cartridge in, and then when you do pop the cartridge in, it snaps right over to that game in your library. Then you just play your game. You'll notice the game is nice and big and has a filter. You don't have to touch anything. Obviously, you can leave it like this. And that looks great. Most people will love this. But of course, there's a million display options for people like me that want to mess around. it defaults to the BVM filter. There are 5 different display modes. There's BVM, PVM, CRT, scan lines, and clean. The first 3 closely mimic different tube displays. BVM is technically the best quality TV you can get. If we zoom in, you'll see these all have different sub-pixel layouts. It's pretty amazing what they did here. My favorite happens to be the PVM one. I just like the way that the sub-pixel layout looks on here. Some of these have way too much dark space between the subpixels, and it makes the whole image look dark. But that's just a personal preference. Scan lines is bad. That one's not a personal preference. Why would you use this one? And clean is good for people who don't appreciate all of the hard work that Analogue put into these filters. There are a lot more settings here. The other big one is image size. Fill doesn't feel like it does anything special. Integer will scale the image to what I think is 10 times the original pixel size, but this will introduce a little window boxing. Integer plus will scale the image to what I think is 12 times the original image size, which will fill the entire vertical height of the screen. This is going to be the best look for most people. Image fit can stretch the image horizontally, but why would you ever want to do that? Edge hardness should probably be soft to give you the most accurate tube TV experience, but I like the look of the hard sometimes. This is a lot more noticeable in 4K. It's definitely a minor difference, so I guess it doesn't really matter all that much. The clean display mode shows more settings. You can change the algorithm that it uses to scale the image. They all look exactly the same to me. Gamma transfer looked better set to tube on my TV, but now looking back at the footage, it looks like it's got more contrast set to modern. And then the rest of these settings are pretty much self-explanatory. When you're on the home screen, you can go to configure, and then you'll see there's even more options. Virtual expansion pack, you can turn that off. It's always on by default, but removing it will purposely worsen the graphics in some games like Rogue Squadron. Apparently, some games like Duke Nukem 0 Hour run worse with the expansion pack on, so you could play around with this if you want. You can disable the Analogue 3D's anti-aliasing. I usually don't like anti-aliasing. It's what blurs the pixels on the edges of things, but it actually looks way worse when you disable it, so I'm leaving this set to off. There's also an overclock feature. I would leave this set to auto all of the time. If you want to preserve the way that games were originally intended to be played, you can go a step further and just click this Force Original Hardware button. Some games like Perfect Dark have slowdown, and maybe that's how it's meant to be enjoyed. I noticed in Mega Man 64, even with this auto setting turned on, the forest area had really bad slowdown. So I closed the game and changed this overclock setting to Unleashed. And when I loaded it back up, that forest area ran just fine. That's honestly a really cool feature. And it's good to know that this Analogue 3D has at least a little more power than an original N64. The Analogue 3D also outputs 32-bit color. The original N64 could process 32 bits of color, but it can only output 21 bits for some reason. So now we can see all the glorious colors the N64 wanted us to see. All of this comes out of the HDMI port in a glorious 4K 60Hz signal. 444 uncompressed color. Now, my living room TV is a 2019 Black Friday special. It's 4K 60Hz, but something broke here. I don't know what changed, but somewhere in the middle of my testing, the Analogue 3D just refused to output a 4K signal anymore. It said my display could only recognize 1080p. I even tried plugging it directly into the TV using the provided HDMI cable, and that still didn't work. Maybe that display doesn't have the bandwidth to take a full 4K uncompressed image, but that doesn't really make any sense because it worked for a while and then it just stopped working. So I don't know what happened. So some of the gameplay footage, you might see a tiny little 1080p marking in the corner there. That's because I had to scale some of these shots up to 4K because I captured the wrong resolution. The Analogue 3D also warns you with this little exclamation point at the bottom if you're not outputting the full uncompressed 4K. It doesn't really matter because when I switched to my gaming monitor, everything was fine. We switched back to the regular full uncompressed 4K and everything's good. I don't know what happened. Just like an Analog Pocket, you're going to want to make sure that your cartridges are nice and clean before you insert them. The Analogue 3D is a little less forgiving than original hardware. See? It says unknown cartridge. Yeah, I know. Don't do that, right? Well, it worked. Most of my games work just fine. I could see some corrosion on my Mario 64 cartridge. The Analogue 3D comes with a little cartridge cleaning sponge, but I just used some isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip, and we're back in business, baby. Look at how many unknown cartridges I have. Because of how many times it doesn't read the cartridge, it just adds another unknown cartridge.
To my surprise, the EverDrive just didn't work, which is really weird. I got one just for this, just to try it out, and it just shows a black screen. Analogue did tell me that not all flash carts were going to work, but this is the most popular one, so I'm very surprised. Hopefully this gets fixed in an update as well, or at the very least, give us a crack. Let us crack it. Let us crack the Analogue.
The front of the device has 4 N64 controller ports, just like an original N64. And it works with original N64 controllers just fine. And you can even use memory packs and rumble packs. No problems there. Or you can buy 8BitDo's new Bluetooth N64 controllers, which are good controllers. It modernizes the N64 layout a little bit, which I love. It gives you 2 Z buttons, which makes playing a game like GoldenEye a little easier because now you can shoot with your right hand instead of your left hand. The thumbstick has the same octagonal stick gate that an N64 controller has, except it's a bit more harsh, and it's not an oval. The N64 stick gate is not completely round. No third-party controller ever has an oval stick gate. This really isn't a big deal. I've never played a game where this actually matters at all, but some purists might get really upset about this. Really just Gilly the Kid. He's the only one I've ever seen complain about it, and he complains a lot about it. Connecting this controller is very easy. You press the LED on the front of the Analogue and it starts searching. Hit the sync button on the 8BitDo controller and it connects and everything just works fine. The instruction manual also says that the Analogue 3D works with the 8BitDo Bluetooth mod kit for an original N64 controller, which I have and made a video on, but I could not get this to work at all. It also says it works with some other USB controllers. None of my Bluetooth or USB N64 controllers work at all. Only the new 8BitDo controller or an N64 controller that you can plug into the N64 port. Those are the only ones that I can use. You can connect up to 4 Bluetooth 8BitDo controllers at once, but I had a little bit of a problem with just one. I had what felt like random, very severe input lag every once in a while. This only happened during one play session, and I think the issue was that I had too many wireless devices in between my controller and my console. I had my phone, my MacBook, an iPad, and a wireless adapter for my camera. During later sessions, when I didn't have all this stuff on my coffee table, it ran great. But this does concern me, because this is the greatest multiplayer console of all time, their words. And some people are gonna wanna connect 4 Bluetooth controllers at once. And if you have 4 people playing with 4 Bluetooth controllers, all with 4 phones in their pockets, that could cause some issues. I've also just heard that 8BitDo controllers have wireless issues on even the Nintendo Switch if you have too many controllers connected via Bluetooth at once. So I would just keep this in mind if you want to get this. Maybe try to limit your wireless interference in the room, or just get 1 or 2 of the Bluetooth controllers and try to use 2 or 3 wired controllers if you want to do some couch play. So I really do like this thing, and I think it makes games look amazing. It's really easy to use and tweak, and games play like a dream on here. I'd definitely say it's worth the price. Obviously, you have to like N64 games. It's probably the best way to play them in 2025. But I do have my gripes, and I've been collecting them all to spill on you all at once. There doesn't seem to be a global settings, so every game that you insert will switch back to the default BVM settings. This is kind of annoying. I'd like to save my PVM settings for every game. Why are there no controller configuration options? The N64 controller is the most unconventional controller that Nintendo has ever made, I think. So why wouldn't you let us configure that on a system level, especially if you're eventually going to let us use other controllers on this thing? I can understand the clean filter option, but why no clean polygons option? Why does it have to be pixelated? Why no way to render this in actual 4K? Like, when we emulate games, the resolution can be cranked. Sometimes it looks good like this too. Textures usually look like ass, but sometimes I like the clean polygon look. Some people might think it looks better than the harsh pixelated look. The tube TV filters and the scanline filter all dim the image slightly because there's a black grid over everything. I'm sure these filters are boosting the brightness a little bit, but I'd like some more brightness boosting to compensate for the darker image the scanlines bring. Give me a brightness boost toggle. I've seen other emulators do this to great effect. I understand why we can't rip our ROMs straight to the console. I don't like it, but I understand why Analogue wouldn't want to cross that bridge. But why can't we rip our save files straight to the SD card on here? I would love that for the Analogue Pocket too. Let me rip my save files so I can finally move this Mega Man 64 save over to my PC. I still can't load it, by the way. It's been how many years? And I've never found out how to get this save file working on my PC. I can rip it, it just doesn't work. Also, if we're doing a full 4K 60Hz 444 signal, why not play around with black frame insertion? This is a technique that utilizes high frame rates of some modern displays to insert a black frame between every other frame. This somehow makes the image look even more like it's coming from an actual tube TV by reducing motion blur. It's really, really cool to see in real life. The Analogue tube TV filters look great enough, but black frame insertion would take them to a whole nother level. And most N64 games run at less than 30 frames per second anyway. So you could do black frame insertion even just on a 60Hz display at this point. And finally, the power button is weird. It's like a toggle. Why'd you change the N64's hard switch? It's so satisfying to click. Those were a lot of gripes, but I promise it's out of love. I really do like this thing. I think it's premium feeling, and it's a genuine piece of retro enthusiast equipment that takes retro games to another level while still preserving a healthy dose of user-friendliness. I don't have to download a FrameMeister manual from the early 2000s to figure out how to upscale my N64 games anymore. I just turn this on, and it just works. And it looks good doing it too. I'm sure they'll update it in the future. It comes with an SD card in the back, and it's pretty easy to update yourself. This also means it should be pretty easy to crack too. Unfortunately, unlike the Analogue Pocket, this only has one FPGA core, and it's not an open FPGA core. I'm sure we'll be able to crack this thing pretty soon after launch and put our own N64 ROMs on here, but I don't think you'll be able to do much outside of the N64 library. Maybe we can get like SNES or Game Boy games on here, but it'll probably be emulating them as if it's an N64 playing a Game Boy game, so that might be a little wonky. I'd be surprised if anybody who pre-ordered one of these things would be disappointed with their purchase. I think that if you're like a retro purist, you probably didn't pre-order this thing anyway. And if you're a guy who's just cool with downloading ROMs off of the internet and playing them on your PC, you're probably not a guy who's going to want one of these things either. Hopefully, if you're one of those people, you could still see why this would be cool to some of us. I really like this. I pre-ordered one for myself, and then they offered to give me one for a review. So thank you very much. Software emulation is still the most convenient. Nintendo Switch Online is getting better every month. Playing games on a PC allows you to run mods and stuff, but there's something extra special about taking my old games, the ones that I grew up on, popping them in and seeing my old save files on there. When I used to spell my name with 2 capital B's, and when Will used to use the name X-Pac because there was a wrestler he liked named X-Pac. I took my wife through some of these games, like a peek into my childhood. She obliged, but I could tell I was enjoying the experience way more than she was, even though she won the Mario Golf game. Perfect Dark is one of my favorite games, but whenever I take someone else through it, I quickly realize it is a bit rough by today's standards. It's still probably better with a more modern controller like this, though. And again, hooking this thing up is probably the easiest way to get N64 going in your living room in 2025. This is the modern N64, and some people are gonna really like that. So what do you guys think about the Analogue 3D? We haven't really seen anything about this at all until today, right now, when you guys are watching this video. They've been pretty coy about like releasing gameplay footage and stuff. So I hope I've done it justice by showing it to you in as high quality as I possibly could. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Add me on Twitter, any and all this other social media garbage. Maybe I missed something. You could tell me about it. I think I might stream a little bit. No, I'm not. I'm going to play Kirby Air Riders this week. We got our podcast tonight, though, twitch.tv/Wulff. Thank you very much. Most important thing you can do is share this video with a friend, somebody who is a retro enthusiast and might like one of these things, and subscribe, please. If you watch this video all the way, then you are obligated to subscribe if you want to ever see me again. YouTube's not going to show you unless you subscribe.